Welcome to my channel, Statistics for Applied Linguistics. My name is Dr. Marnie Menegra, and today we're going to look at the structure of the academic thesis. So these videos are designed for my students in my research methods course, the master's level program. But here we're going to look at the structure of the thesis so you can look at how we can start setting our outline together. So in my previous video, I was looking at the empirical cycle of research. Keep in mind, this is circular, it is not linear. And we have our observation, induction, deduction, testing, and evaluation stages. In the empirical cycle of research, in the observation section, this is the creation of the idea and the research hypothesis based on information patterns. Induction is the creation of the hypothesis. Deductions, the hypothesis is transformed to a prediction. Testing. The hypothesis is tested. If it is confirmed, it is provisionally supported. It is not proven, it is provisionally supported. If it is not confirmed, it is rejected and then adjusted. And the evaluation, the results are interpreted in terms of the hypothesis. Now, how does the empirical cycle of research relate to a thesis? Well, in each section of an academic paper relates to a section of the empirical cycle of research. So the observation is our background information, our theoretical background, our literature review. The induction is our hypothesis statements. The deduction is our method section. The testing is our results section, and the evaluation is our discussion section and our conclusions. So now let's look at the sections of an academic thesis. So with an academic thesis, you're going to start with your title page, which is a template. And the template you're going to find in Moodle, or you can see your supervisor for your template. You will find the signed work forms. The signed work forms should be signed by the student, supervisor, and program director. This is, of course, is going to vary from institution to institution. And the abstract. Your abstract is written last. I will have a subsequent video on how to put together an abstract. There's actually a very simple formula for this. And then your dedication. Your dedication is optional. This is a single page with 1 or 2 lines on it, and you're just dedicating it to someone who has really supported you, who is very dear to you. Again, you don't have to include this section if you do not want to. Do keep in mind whoever you are dedicating your thesis to. The dedication will stay until the end of time. So then we have our acknowledgement section. The acknowledgement section is usually 1 paragraph to 1 page of the thesis. I have seen this go over to a page and a half. And this is where you need to thank anyone who has helped you with your study. So you do need to thank your supervisor, and you thank your participants, not by name, but in general. And anyone who supported you, maybe helped you with statistics, maybe helped you with other parts of the study. Anyone in your personal life who's been very supportive. So sometimes people will skip the dedication and they will just put people they should be dedicating their thesis to into the acknowledgement section because they feel more comfortable that way. Following the acknowledgements is your table of contents. This is the list of every single section and subsection in your thesis, from background information all the way through to the appendices. Some people will put the front pages like the abstract and acknowledgements into the table of contents. I've seen that done. Most people will start the table of contents with your background information on page 1. Following the table of contents, you have your list of tables. Now, of course, if you do not have tables in your thesis, which would be rare, you do not have a list of tables. The tables are usually in your method section and in your results section, but I have seen them in the background information as well. And your list of figures, if applicable. Your figures are your pie charts, your bar charts, any graphs that you may have, along with any images that are in your thesis. And again, those are usually in the results section. If there's figures related to the theory, that may be in the front section as well. Now, Optional, you can include a list of abbreviations, a list of terms, or a glossary. So for students who are working with low frequency words or very sophisticated words, such as when I've had students working in the area of neurolinguistics, they tend to put in a glossary or a list of terms. If you have a lot of acronyms or abbreviations in your thesis, you may want to consider putting in a list of abbreviations at the front. Now we start with chapter 1. And chapter 1 is your introduction and your background information. This should be half of your thesis. So if we consider that a master's thesis should be double that of an undergraduate thesis, your thesis total should be 60 to 100 pages. So your chapter 1 should be approximately half of that. So it should be approximately 30 to 50 pages in length. Now this is double spaced in a 12-point font, and you're going to put a whole bunch of different subsections into the background information section. I'm going to do a subsequent video discussing how to write this section of the thesis. So it looks very overwhelming, but keep in mind when you're writing the thesis, think of it as cleaning your house. You're not going to clean everything at once. You're going to start room by room and section by section. That's how we're going to write this. And also keep in mind that regular page numbers start on page 1. All of the pages preceding the introduction are numbered with Roman numerals. I will do a subsequent video on how to do the page numbering, because this can be a little tricky and it's a little overwhelming when you're at the end of the writing process and you have to figure out all of these formatting issues here. Now, in chapter 1, you have your theoretical review and your literature review. These are usually two different things. In a research article, you will often see these combined together, but your theoretical review talks about any theories that your hypotheses and research questions may be based on. So it can be a theory of collaborative learning, a theory related to intercultural competence, such as Deardorff's theory or Byron's theory. So any of these related theories, and the literature review tends to be other studies that are related to your thesis. So what other people have done in the area, what did they do, what did they conclude? And then at the end of chapter 1, you're going to find your research questions and hypotheses. So this will be a subsection here. We will review how to write the research questions and how to write the hypotheses in a subsequent video. Now we get to chapter 2. Chapter 2 is going to be anywhere from 3 to 5 pages of a master's thesis. It can be a little longer depending on the materials, but this is a general rule. So the participants, you're going to say who exactly participated in the study. Is it a convenience sample? Are they the students in your class? Did they give consent? Did their parents give consent? What are their approximate ages? What are their CEFR levels of any languages that they may be speaking? What are their native languages? The location of the study. So that's all going to be in the participants, the information of who participated. Then we have the materials. Now, if you're using any form of technology, you're going to describe it here. So if it's a mobile app like Duolingo, then you're going to have Duolingo listed in here, along with what exactly this app is. But then you also need to include that if the students are using Duolingo to do their study, then are they using their own devices, or was there a tablet provided for them, or are they using computers in the lab? So that goes in the materials section. And then we have our procedure. Our procedure is what exactly did everybody have to do in this study? Did they have to do a pre-test? Did they have to do a post-test? What did they do between the pre-test and the post-test? So think of your method section like a recipe, where the participants and materials, these are going to be the ingredients for the recipe, and the procedure are the instructions. Exactly what you have to do. Somebody should be able to pick up your thesis and read the method section and replicate your study. If they cannot replicate your study based on what you've written in the method section, then it's not clear enough. Now, there might be subsequent sections in the method section that are going to be the data analysis, what you're anticipating for the next section. I did not include it on this slide, but you can absolutely include that. And that brings us to chapter 3, which is the results section. So this should be about 10 to 20 pages. And this is going to include the statistical analyses. Now with this section, this is where you're going to find most of the graphs and the tables, but you do not interpret the data in the results section. You are only presenting the actual numbers. In the discussion section, this is where you interpret the data. So this is where you discuss what the statistics mean and whether the research questions and hypotheses have been answered and accepted. In this section, you are not going to bring in new information. You're not going to introduce a new theory. You're not going to introduce studies that you haven't already talked about, but you're going to relate what you've done to some of the studies or the theories that you may have previously mentioned. And this is where you will typically find the limitations of the study and suggestions for further research. This is often one paragraph. This is where you, as the author, define what you could have done better. What didn't exactly work? Did you not have enough students in the study? Is the sample too limited? Did the time frame not work out? Was there something wrong with one of the tests that you didn't notice earlier? So you're going to put that in there so that way someone doesn't criticize your paper. You've already identified that it's there. And then following that, we have the conclusion, which is a 1 paragraph to 2 pages. And this is going to summarize the thesis. Now, depending on program and depending on thesis supervisor, I've sometimes seen the limitations come after the conclusion. Personally, I prefer to see them before because I think that once you've concluded things, there should be anything afterwards. But I have seen that. So check with your supervisor and make sure that whether the limitations are going before or after the conclusions. And then we have our references. Our references are going to be in alphabetical order in APA 7 format and include the DOIs. So the DOIs you might need to search for, but I am going to be doing a subsequent video on how to format the references as well. And 50% of your references should have been published within the last 10 years. The other 50%, I said should have, but they can be older. And the older references are usually related to the theoretical background. The newer references are usually related to more recent studies in this field. Following the references, we have the appendices. And this is always the last part. Think of the appendices. So an appendix, the appendix in your body, if you take it out, you can still function. The appendix of the thesis, if you take it off, it still functions. It's supplementary material. And in this section, this is where you can include your ethics forms and blank consent forms. Do not include any participant data in the consent forms. Do not put the actual consent forms in there, just the blank forms, along with copies of tests and questionnaires. Again, these are blank forms. Do not put the actual responses from each of the participants in here. Just a copy of the blank pretest, the blank post-test, any of the questionnaires, and any additional statistics or tables not included in the results section. So if you have contingency tables, so if you are writing all the information in a paragraph, you don't need a contingency table in the actual thesis. It can just go into the appendix. And then any other relevant information, so such as maps. So if I'm talking about people that live in certain regions with certain languages and certain communities, I might need a map to explain where these people are or who I'm talking about. That can be included here if it does not fit in the thesis. So these are the sections of the thesis. Here are the references for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.